Late at night, on the 27th of August 1992, two men were driving on the A70 main road from Edinburgh to Tarabrax when they encountered a strange disc hovering over the road. The two men, Gary Wood and Colin Wright, blacked out. When they came to and drove on, they discovered that they had lost a considerable amount of time. Despite suffering fatigue and nightmares after the event, they were disbelieved by their friends and eventually contacted paranormal investigator Malcolm Robinson. Join us on Aliens Explored as we delve into the mystery of the A70 alien abduction.
Aliens Explored is a weekly podcast exploring famous and obscure cases of UFO sightings, alien abductions and other strange events from both a believing and a skeptical perspective whilst keeping an open mind. I'm Stu Jackson, a professional actor and amateur ufologist with a particular interest in the crop circle phenomenon. I'll be debating that otherworldly visitations are real. The truth is out there.
And I'm Neil Kelly. I'm a professional actor as well and used to work for the military as an intelligence analyst. I'll be arguing from a more doubtful point of view. I mean, it's all a bit far-fetched, isn't it?
Welcome back, listeners, to another episode of Aliens Explored, your weekly podcast where we look at aliens, UFOs, UAPs, the people who research them, the people who debunk them, and sometimes the people who have contact with them. I am one of your hosts, Stu Jackson.
And I'm your other host, Neil Kelly. How you doing,
Hi,
Stu?
Neil. Good, thank you. Good to see you again.
Yeah.
Now, yes, it's always good to see you. You sound surprised.
Yeah, it's good to see you. I'm pleasantly surprised every time.
There was a question I was actually going to ask you off air, and I thought, no, do you know what? This would be a great question
Okay.
for you to answer for the listeners as well. Obviously, we're into our 4th year now of Aliens Explored, and I know we've discussed a few times about your changing perception of ufology and UFOs in general. We've discussed that a few times and how that's evolving in light of all this. Because this was all new to you, wasn't it? 3 years ago, 3+ years ago.
Pretty much, yeah. A lot of it was.
But what I was wondering was, are there more... is it making you aware that there are far more mysteries in the world than you hitherto thought?
It's certainly making me aware of that. Yeah, that there's more out there that I'm able to come up with an explanation for. I suppose the difference between me and a devoted ufologist or a religious person, for instance, is that I don't pretend to have an answer. I don't know what it is, so I just say I don't know. I mean, I could speculate, say, yeah, this fits into my theory about this, that, or the other, but I'm sceptical of that kind of thing. So yes, I am. I'm certainly a lot of stuff. Like our previous episode about the Roswell rock, where I just don't know. I've got no explanation for it. Don't know how it was made, or why, or what it means, or whatever.
Do you know, that's interesting to hear, because as much as we often take sort of opposing views of subjects, actually I'm exactly this. I'm also incredibly aware as someone who claims to know the answer. I mean, I don't claim to have any answers myself. I'm just, this is what I believe, this is what I speculate might be. I don't say this is definitely what it is, and because I think the moment you go down the line of having an absolute, when you don't have absolute proof, it's it becomes problematic for me.
Not absolute proof. I mean, we're not. It's not a court case, but at least some compelling evidence. And that's what I think.
Why shouldn't it be like a court case? Why shouldn't you want absolute proof to believe absolutely?
I don't need absolute proof. There's all sorts of things I believe that I don't have absolute proof of. They're things I prefer to believe. But I can justify. I can say why I believe something is so. Yeah. But no, I don't need an absolute watertight case. There will always be an element of what I prefer to believe.
This might be going a little bit down the rabbit hole here, and I promise you, listeners, we will get onto today's subject in a moment. But I'm really intrigued by that, because I would say there is a difference between belief and knowledge. If you believe something, you are effectively taking a leap of faith. You're saying it's what I believe to be true, but you're not saying I know it to be true. That's a different thing. Knowledge almost like completely contradicts belief.
Well, I don't know. I say, well, I know this to be so, and I know this to be so, I know this to be so. Therefore, my speculation about this unknown thing tends to weigh in favour of this belief. But it's all based on, it comes back to knowledge, but ultimately, making a leap. Or in my case, not making a leap. Just saying, I don't know. Yeah, it might be a UFO, might be something more biblical or an interdimensional being or whatever. But I don't know. There's no. Yeah, I mean, the Roswell Rock is an artifact, so it's evidence of something, but we don't know what it's evidence of.
No. Could be evidence that someone was bored one day and decided to make a thing.
Could be, yeah. I mean, I've certainly heard pretty a lot of testimony, and people testifying that they have evidence, but then saying, well, they can't show you this evidence for whatever reason. Well, in that case, it's just testimony, isn't it? There's no evidence. There's nothing you can show us.
Now, when you come into cases like Dave Grush, though,
that's just who I was thinking of.
I thought that was where you were going with that. But he's doing it the right way, because he's saying, I believe the public should know the things that I have been shown. I believe the public should be shown them. Here I am in Congress pushing for that to happen. But because it is currently forbidden knowledge for the public, that's why I can't tell you. He's doing it by the book. He's doing it the right way.
You see, and that's where there's a credibility gap, because if you know a secret, if you're a military officer and you have access to classified information, you don't go around telling people you have access to this classified information, even if you think it should be declassified, that there's a great public interest in knowing that it's declassified. You don't go telling people that you know a secret, because then people will try and find out what that secret is if they think that secret's worth having. The best way to keep a secret is for no one to know that you even have a secret, isn't it? Steganography, it's called.
This might change your entire perspective on the whole David Grush thing. He was everything he said, he was authorised to say by his superiors.
Yeah, but it's saying nothing. It's suspicious. Yeah, I've got this evidence.
He has seen evidence.
Yeah, I've seen evidence.
He's seen evidence. And
I've seen evidence,
interest.
But I'm not allowed to show it to you. And so told me this, but I'm not allowed to tell you who that was or whatever. You know, it just seems really odd that you're saying you have secrets, but I can't tell you what the secret is. No one does that in any...
Because he doesn't have clearance to share those secrets.
Yeah, but if you don't have clearance to share a secret, you don't have clearance to share the fact of the secret. That the
That's
secret
where
even
he did
exists.
have clearance.
Yeah, but why would they do that? Why would they say, you can tell people you've got evidence, but you can't show them the evidence. You can tell them you've been told this, but you're not allowed to tell them who told you that. Or
let me answer that very question. Why would they do that? If it is a controlled act of disclosure to gradually prepare the public for the knowledge.
But
that's why they would do that.
But it doesn't take us any further, does it? It just, it's just some guy saying, well, I've seen stuff. If I could show it to you, you'd be really impressed, but I can't show it to you. So
it conditions the public ready for the day when they do present the evidence.
Well,
it's a gradual conditioning process.
I don't believe that. I don't believe.
Anyway, we're gone right off topic already.
Let's visit this planet, and here's a country. It's the most powerful military power on Earth by several degrees.
That'd be China, then.
Sorry.
That'd be China, then.
China's tiny compared to American military power, and their budget is tiny compared to America's budget is bigger than China, Russia, and whatever the next biggest power is, all put together. So let's go to Earth and let's help them develop more military power. Let's help them develop anti-gravity propulsion systems and anti-matter ray guns and this. Well, that sounds like a good, a wise thing to do. For this warlike country that invades another country pretty much every year.
All right. Well, let us discuss a country that cannot be argued as a major military power in the world, but I'll tell you what does contain some of the loveliest people in the world is Scotland.
Scotland. We love
Let's
Scotland.
Bring this back. We're way over time already for our preamble, so
10 minutes in, and we finally 10 minutes in we get to introduce the subject. Great, yeah.
Down that rabbit hole.
This is about a supposed alien abduction that occurred back in 1992 on the A70 highway, which is the road they were driving from Edinburgh to Tarabrax. And they just passed the Harperig Reservoir at around 11:30 p.m. They were out late, weren't they? They had initially described some sort of object hovering above the ground, wider than the road. The next thing they knew, they blacked out. And then they arrived at their destination 2 hours late. A journey that should have taken half an hour took 2.5 hours. And
so I feel like you're skipping over a lot of details here.
Well, I'm giving you the gist of it. These guys... and then, as I understand it, later, under hypnosis, recovered memory... They remembered being aboard this craft and being
there's definitely
examined.
A lot of things being missed out here. So, first of all, setting the scene, Harperig Reservoir, it's about 15 miles southwest of Edinburgh.
Okay.
This is Gary Wood and Colin Wright. I believe Gary was driving, but I've not had that 100%. That's where the reports seem to indicate, but... I couldn't say for absolute definite truth. They were delivering some satellite equipment to a friend of theirs. I mean, that is late at night to be doing that.
It is very late at night.
Sounds sketchy to me, but I'm not casting aspersions. That's not the way I do things, but it happens. And yes, they were just pretty much by the reservoir when this object, this smooth, black, shiny object, as you rightly said, it's wider than the road. Now, the A70 highway is a good description. We call it an A road here in the UK, and it's a main artery road, but they're also generally single carriage. They might have dual carriage sections, but the A70 is a single carriage road. So when we say it's this object was bigger than the width of the road, that's bigger than two car widths.
Only slightly. I mean, I'm looking at a picture of it here, the A70 near Crosswood Hill Farm, and it really is a narrow 2-lane tree-lined road.
Yeah.
It has a reputation for being a very dangerous road. Many extremely dangerous sections, black spots. In some places there's hardly, there's barely a half mile stretch of it's called the Lang Wang between Balerno and Carnwath that has not witnessed a fatal accident over the past 20 years. And if you've got a narrow road lined with trees, if you come off the road, you're going to hit one of those trees and then you're done. So
yes, and people tend to speed on A roads.
They do, especially at night. And I'm assuming they had the road to themselves. There was no one sharing the road with them who might have seen what happened to them.
It would be unlikely at that time of night, certainly. And the speed limit for our overseas listeners, on a road like that, if it's the national speed limit, that is 60 miles an hour on a single carriage road, 70 on a dual carriage. But amazing how many people think national speed limit is just 70 regardless of how many
because it's the same sign, isn't it? It's just that white sign with a black diagonal line means national speed limit applies. But 2-lane road, 60, dual carriageway or wider, 70.
That's it. So yes, and they described it as a 2-tiered disc. Now I'm trying to figure out in my head what that actually means. Is that 2 separate discs joined together? Does it mean there's a wider one with a smaller disc on top, a bit like the flying saucers behind us?
It looks something like a pulley on its side or a spool.
That's what I'm picturing. Yeah.
Okay. Almost like a discus and then another discus on top of it. That's what I'm.
That's how I'm picturing it in my head. Definitely. A yo-yo on its side is another.
Yeah, a yo-yo on its side.
But it was smooth, black, shiny, and had no windows. They stopped the car. They were in awe and fear. And next thing they know, they've blacked out. They've woken up. The contents of the car were strewn all over the road. So they put it all back in the car. They're feeling disorientated. They're feeling, I suppose, dizzy and what have you. But they continue the rest of their journey, only to arrive. They realise what should have been like half an hour after they set off was actually 2 hours after they set off. So they lost an hour and 90 minutes of missing time.
Okay, I mean the version of the story I'm reading here is to get things in their sort of chronological order. They initially described witnessing some sort of object hovering over the road, and then seem to have blacked out, and that's it. So, doing 60 miles an hour on a notoriously dangerous road and you black out, I mean that's pretty that's going to be pretty dangerous, isn't it?
The report I read is that the craft appeared before them, they stopped, then they blacked out.
Okay, yeah. And no other cars came along.
Contents of the car in the road.
Okay, so on this road, no other traffic passed in that hour and a half. No one saw anything. There's no one to bury. This is a major road.
Yeah, but at that time of night in the 90s, I wouldn't rule that out.
Oh, that's way too long, I think, on a major road for there to be nothing on it. I mean, it's not like a little track, it's a major road.
Well, there's major and major. It's a main road.
Yeah. It's a main road.
I would describe it as a major road. It's not... what's it called? Tarabrax, I keep wanting to call it. That's not the name.
Tarabrax. Tarabrax.
Yes. Tarabrax. That's not a big place. It's not a big town by any stretch of the imagination.
No.
So it's like, it's like being on a country road.
Yeah, but a trunk road nonetheless.
Well, I've been on A roads in Wiltshire that my Land Rover can barely fit down.
Yeah, and
it's still an A road.
But even driving in the dead of night, you come across something. I mean, all right, I know I'm a Londoner. The idea of an empty road is kind of hard to imagine for me. But that they were there for.
Just as when I moved to London, I couldn't understand why people didn't go to bed. Why the place didn't stop at 9 o'clock. That was bizarre for me. So yeah, let's chalk that one up to different experiences.
Okay,
but
there's no one. They haven't. There doesn't seem to be any call out for anyone else who might have been in the area at the time. It doesn't say anything about that anywhere.
But I don't find that unusual, especially not for the 90s. Not in an area like that.
It's not that long ago. Okay, let's just say it was
moving on from that, though.
A completely empty road where you could stop a car for over an hour and a half, and be fairly confident that no one's going to come along and see what you're doing to the occupants.
At the early hours of the morning, absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
11:30 at night.
Perfectly reasonable to me. I sense your disbelief, but I honestly think that's because, as you rightly say, you're a Londoner. That in the countryside, that's absolutely 100% reasonable.
Okay, so in the days that followed, they don't know what happened. They blacked out, and that was it. In the days that followed, Gary Wood started having nightmares and feeling generally unwell, whatever that means. And so the pair reached out to an investigator called Malcolm Robinson. Ended up undergoing hypnotic regression in an effort to account.
Before you run ahead there, to clarify a point, it was the next day, not a few days later.
It says
in the day.
Okay, it says in the days that followed, but then it says later the pair reached out to investigate. So they got into.
I'm telling you what happened.
Okay.
The next day, Gary was extremely fatigued. Extremely fatigued, and then within a couple of days he started having nightmares. Two separate things, but the next day he was unwell and incredibly fatigued. That didn't happen a few days later. That's the way that sounds. The nightmare started a few days later, yes,
but they actually so that's it. That's an interesting chronology, because if they reached out the next day to Malcolm Robinson and ended up undergoing hypnotic regression and then started having nightmares and feeling generally unwell, I'd wonder what Malcolm Robinson was doing to him.
No, they reached out to Malcolm Robinson. Malcolm Robinson, for our listeners, is a prominent UFO investigator, and he's a paranormal investigator in Scotland. Quite prominent, quite well known at the time around that area. But I think he's become more of a UFO researcher as a result of this case than anything else. But it wasn't the next day that they contacted Malcolm.
Okay, so let's get the chronology. Because you keep saying to me, you're confusing me. I'm getting so. They had this incident where they blacked out. In their car, arrived at their destination 2 hours later. Then what happened?
The next day, I'm guessing this means later that day, because obviously they would have arrived early hours of the morning at their destination.
Okay.
So that day, Gary, in particular, feels incredibly fatigued.
Yeah.
Days go on, like a couple of days later, Gary starts having nightmares.
Right.
The pair of them are they're kind of just keep going back to what happened in that last time. What happened? They can't just shake it off. They can't just put it out of their minds. Mm-hmm. So after some days, possibly a couple of weeks, they then reach out to Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
Desperately wanting some sort of explanation so that they can I suppose get closure on the event.
So they reached out to someone who's known as a UFO investigator.
He was known as a paranormal investigator at the time.
Okay.
So not specifically UFOs back then. He is now,
and it says they reached out to him and ultimately ended up undergoing hypnotic regression in an effort to account for the mysterious missing time. So that doesn't suggest that Malcolm Robinson put them under hypnotic regression. It's not actually saying that, is it?
No, I know he led the... he facilitated them being put under hypnotic regression.
Okay.
I honestly don't know if it was him or not. I know he facilitated it. He arranged it, basically.
And that's when they remembered being on the alien spacecraft and being subjected to some form of medical examination.
Yes, but a very pertinent point here. They were put under hypnotic regression separately.
Mm-hmm.
So each was unaware of the other's hypnotic testimony, for want of a better word.
Okay.
You know, that the stories that they recounted, it was done separately. It was done quite strictly in that regard. And yes, they recounted the same story up to the point that they themselves in this story were parted. They recounted that this UFO, this UAP, shot a bright light at the vehicle. They both said about 6 humanoid figures. Gary specifically described them as being deformed and ugly.
Mm-hmm.
They both described them as 6 humanoid figures. They both described convulsions as if they were receiving electric shocks. And at that point, they were parted from each other, and this is the point at which their stories differed from each other. But up until that point, separately under hypnosis, they recounted the same thing.
For me, that's not compelling, because I remember the recovered memory scandal, where all these children under hypnosis remembered that they'd been sexually assaulted by Satanists at school. And they remembered all sorts of bizarre things, and it was all prompted by the people putting them under hypnosis, who were, they had this bee in the bonnet about satanic rituals, satanic sexual abuse, and they kind of made it up and put the words in the children, hypnotised the children, or put them into a suggestible state, and fed them that, and people went to jail until the whole thing was kind of overturned. We saw that here in Britain. We saw that in Cleveland. We saw that in the Orkney Islands, where children were programmed to remember being sexually abused or being subjected to satanic rituals. And
hypnosis is open to abuse. There's no question about that.
But that's why I'm not particularly convinced by the fact that they told these same stories. Although they were separate, the common denominator is the person hypnotising them, who might have had an agenda, especially given that it was someone known as a UFO investigator.
No, again, he wasn't a UFO investigator at the time. He was a paranormal investigator.
Okay, paranormal investigator.
What in fact he specifically specialised in was poltergeist activity.
Okay.
So I don't know if that changes your opinion of him, but if at that time he was going to plant something, that's what surely he would have gone for.
That poltergeist would have been his thing at that time.
He's only become a UFO investigator as a result of this case. This case was so compelling to him. This is the claim he makes. Was so compelling to him that it's kind of turned him around, and this has become his focus now.
Well, in fact, the whole thing was so compelling that the Ministry of Defence took it seriously. They had been getting more freedom of information requests about UFOs than any other subject. They actually looked into this. It was declassified only a few years later, wasn't it?
It was under a raft of a huge amount of cases that were declassified. Yes, this was one of many cases, but certainly the most compelling at the moment. There is also some physical evidence on the car of something occurring, where there was a white crystallization around the car that kept appearing for several weeks afterwards.
Like salt.
Now I've lived on the coast. Well, I've lived when I was in Cornwall. I was right by the coast, and we used to get that on the car, and it was salt. But the thing is, where this happened, this is nowhere near the coast. This is a long way from the coast. Miles. But yes, as soon as I heard the white crystallization, the description of it, that sounded very much like salt to me.
Yeah. I mean, have we come across this before,
where
there's been a UFO and then suddenly people notice salt all over their car?
No, not specifically, no.
And it was August time, wasn't it? So they wouldn't have been salting the roads, even in Scotland, as anti-ice.
I wouldn't want to rule that out completely.
Okay.
Because it does get very, very cold up there.
But August...
You've been to Edinburgh?
Yeah, I've been to Edinburgh. I mean, yeah, it was a bit cold, but it wasn't... there wasn't ice on the roads in August.
But out in the mountains, in the countryside, it could well be.
Possibly, okay.
It's very elevated, and yeah.
So how high were they when this was it?
I don't know. I'm just saying that I wouldn't rule it out. I'm not suggesting. Oh, it's definitely salt. I'm just saying I wouldn't rule out them salting the road around then.
I mean, it says this much of the road is over elevated desolate moorland, and ascends several times on its course to heights over 1,000 feet above sea level.
Yeah. But the thing is, if it was salt from the road that had been like kicked up and coated the car, then you wash the vehicle off, it doesn't come back again. But that's what kept happening. For several weeks, this white crystallization kept reappearing.
Okay, so this road, actually it looks like it goes, am I reading it right that it's going from Edinburgh near the east coast of Scotland, and then it goes southwest, or more west than south, across the country to the opposite, to the west coast.
Ultimately to the west coast, yes, but where this happened was only about 15 miles southwest of Edinburgh.
Okay, so they would have been well inland and at an elevation, but as you say, they could have salted the roads even in August.
It gets very cold in Scotland. Really cold. Especially in those desolate areas.
Then they wouldn't have remarked on it, would they? They would have said, well, yeah, this is just road salt. This is just grit that they put down for ice.
And it wouldn't have kept coming back.
No. No, unless they'd taken a trip to the seaside. I thought, oh, there's that salt again.
Now, just to to round off the story that was recounted under hypnosis, and I fully appreciate it's not the most perfect method of recovering information. So Colin said that he was stripped off and given a thorough examination.
Anal probe? Are we talking anal probe?
He didn't say that, no.
Okay.
He didn't say that. That there was some triangular device with two red lights that appeared to scan him. They put a red light into his eye, which felt like he was having a red hot poker shoved in it. Gary, on the other hand, said that he was examined all over by something he described as a black lens, and that he saw around 20 to 30 beings, and they kept using the word sanctuary to him.
And didn't they say something about how humankind's potential had been capped?
Not humankind. This is a really unusual statement. They said that in many ways humans were more advanced than them, but that their potential had been capped.
Okay,
so
not saying that they capped it, that our potential has been capped.
That their potential had been capped.
Okay. So that's not how I understood it. They said that humans were more advanced than them in many ways, but that their potential had been capped.
That their potential, not ours, theirs.
That's not. This is ambiguous. It's saying humans are more advanced than them in many ways, but their potential had been capped. So I think they're still talking about the humans have been capped. Human potential.
I think they were talking about themselves. That would explain why humans are more advanced. And when we say advanced, we're not talking technologically, we're talking physically.
No, but then they would have said humans were more advanced than them in many ways because their potential had been capped. But they're not saying they're saying, but that their potential had been capped. So, the human potential has been capped. Therefore, we're going to overtake you in those areas where we haven't quite met.
Say, if human potential had been capped, we'd be less advanced.
No, no. I'm saying human potential has been capped.
It's open to debate and discussion.
Yeah, so it's very ambiguous. It's badly written, and it's. I'm definitely reading this saying human potential has been capped because it made me think of what some scientists have called the filter. That civilizations can't get more advanced than we are now because they will destroy themselves. That their technology will overtake their wisdom. And we will destroy ourselves either, as Noam Chomsky says, either slowly through not caring for our environment, but catastrophic climate change caused by our activity, or we'll do it quickly in a nuclear war. But either way, we're heading for catastrophe, and that's why civilizations. That's the filter that civilizations have got to get through in order to become more advanced.
I've heard similar. When it comes to evolution, I've heard a more positive take onto why we are at the peak of evolution is because when it comes to survival of the fittest, now we're using technology to overcome those obstacles. Whereas historically, we'd have had to have evolved to overcome them. Now we're just using technology.
But we only really evolve to meet a changing situation. I mean, I've speculated the Dutch are supposedly the tallest people on the planet. And it's a low-lying country that in time gone past was regularly flooded. So, being a bit whimsical here, but you can suggest, well, maybe it was only the taller people who could keep their heads above water who lived to reproduce and would produce tall children. The same genes. That's,
quite possibly.
If there's a it's who can adapt, isn't it, to a situation? But take your point that if we're just going to use
more like a healthy lifestyle, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, what we're in danger of doing now is making ourselves redundant, replacing ourselves with technology that will be owned by a few very wealthy individuals who will have no need of any of us.
That's it. Anyway, we've got off topic.
Yeah.
So, I'm going to ask you the usual question. Gary and Colin, do you think they were telling the truth?
No. I don't think they were telling the truth. I'm not sure that they even think it's the truth. I mean, they haven't changed their story in all these years.
Nope.
Something happened to them. The MOD took an interest in it, but I'm not convinced that they had this whole recovered memory thing is such a minefield for me. And when we put someone into a suggestible state and then you suggest things to them, I think that's especially people who might have an agenda, like the evangelical fundamentalist Christians who had an agenda about Satan and wanted to get rid of a few progressive teachers. I think
I hear you.
Yeah, I think that's something like that has gone on. We're not getting the whole story here.
Well, this is one of those occasions when we're on completely opposite ends of the fence because I believe what they say, and to bring this full circle, that doesn't mean to say I know they're telling the truth.
No.
I believe they're telling the truth. Though.
Because as with so many, well, as with all of our UFO encounters, all we have is testimony and very little evidence.
That's it. So. That's it. But do you know what I really want to hear?
What do you want to hear? From our listeners, maybe.
What our listeners believe about this case, and of course all the cases. So listeners, if you can write in and tell us what you think about Colin and Gary's story, is there truth to it, is there not?
Especially if
let us know.
Either Gary or Colin or Malcolm Robinson are listening in. Yeah, we'd love to hear from you too.
Absolutely. So you can email us, aliensexplored@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter and YouTube. And if you can give us a cheeky like and subscribe over at YouTube, we'd really appreciate that. You can find us by searching for Aliens Explored. All the links are in the description below. And of course, if you're one of our Patreon subscribers, you get exclusive access to our Discord server as well for the minor amount of £2 a month.
You can't afford not to, can you? It's a giveaway.
I thought you were about to say, you can't afford that. You can't afford not to, absolutely. Join us next time. Oh, it's a Halloween special coming up.
Okay.
So we are going to be discussing, and very relevant to this topic today, alien abductophobia. Condition. Alien abductophobia.
Alien abductophobia.
What do you think that might be the fear of, Neil?
Being abducted by aliens.
Bang on the money. We'll be discussing that as our Halloween special this year, so don't miss that.
Look forward to that.
Indeed. In the meantime, keep watching out for black, shiny, windowless, two-tiered flying discs wherever you are in the world, Scotland or otherwise. And yeah, just generally keep watching the skies. Take care for now.
Catch you next time. Bye-bye.
Aliens Explored is a Feagle Films production in association with Juicy Falls. Music by Darren Mafucci and editing by Stu Jackson. Find us on Twitter and Facebook by searching Aliens Explored or visit aliensexplored.com.